Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to go over an article that somebody referenced in my comments episode 8 about how it seems like Hebrew has had an influence on European languages, which is of interest because obviously we know that Israel was scattered. I'm of the opinion that those that were a main body that went to the northern countries went into Europe primarily, and are not still a homogeneous group somewhere hidden on the planet, although that is still a possibility. I'm not going to say that it's not, but I don't think so. But either way, whatever view you take, I think that you're going to find this interesting. And I haven't excuse me, I haven't already gone through here and read it. I literally just ended my comments episode 8, but I just want to go ahead and just read this thing, comment on it. I would appreciate comments and what you think about it. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Also like this video if you like it, and hit the notification bell. Okay, so this is called Tracing the Dispersion by Terry M. Blodgett. And over here, I did kind of skim through this a little bit. Terry M. Blodgett is a professor of languages and linguistics at Southern Utah University, where he teaches German language, German literature, German history, and Hebrew. This article is based on the author's doctoral dissertation, Phonological Similarities in Germanic and Hebrew, University of Utah, 1981, and subsequent studies. Okay, this is actually in, I'm assuming this is the Ensign, February 1994. Okay, so let's just go ahead and read this. Stick with me. I think that we're going to find, I don't even know what we're going to find here other than who was it that made that comment? Let me go over here really quick because I want to give you credit again for bringing this up. Your studio comments. This was recommended by Bonnie Nandino. So thank you so much, Bonnie. I'll bring this up in another comments episode because I like to do everything in order. But Tyler Cragen says someone recorded the Oklahoma-Kansas devotional. This is their channel link. Okay, cool. I'll put that in this video and also the next comments episode, episode 9. Thank you, Tyler Cragen, for finding that. Okay, so what befell the tribes of Israel's northern kingdom many centuries ago? That question has been asked by students of scriptures for generations. Like any important historical topic, it's one that deserves careful and thoughtful study. Yes, that's exactly what I'm trying to do with this channel. Although I'm not an academic or a professional, I think I'll be able to find out a lot of interesting things that will benefit everybody and get some sense. It's all of our duty to learn about Israel, I think, in this church. I think it's really, really important. So, but yeah, it's something that takes a lot of time, a lot of study. I think it's really complex. Restructuring ancient history, even religious history, can be compared to putting together a large, complex puzzle with many pieces missing. One must locate and assemble as many pieces as possible, then form as accurate a picture of the past as the facts allow. In tracing Israel's dispersion, therefore, many pieces may be considered. Artifacts, vestiges of ancient customs, archaeology, cultural anthropology, and scriptural and historical accounts. This article explores only one such piece, that of linguistic evidence. Okay. Every language evolves. Language is a dynamic cultural phenomenon. It changes and grows. In our day, modern technology, the sciences, and the media have accelerated the acquisition of new words, but at the same time have standardized spelling and pronunciation. In the past, languages acquired new words more slowly, but they were more likely to experience spelling and pronunciation changes. Some of these changes took only decades, others took centuries. One of the major sources of language change occurs when two groups of people, each speaking a different language, come in contact with one another. Each language influences the other, becoming a catalyst for change and eventually settling into patterns characteristic of the languages, prompting the changes. These patterns serve as clues to help a linguist determine what the language was like before the change took place and which languages caused the changes. Now, I noticed this when I went to Spain on my mission, and just a few examples. For example, as far as I know, even to this day, in Spain, when they say internet, they don't have a separate word for internet. They say internet, right? And that's definitely not a word that would have come organically from Spanish itself. Also, I noted like the differences between Spain Spanish and Spanish in Latin America. In Latin America, it takes a lot more words from English than Spain Spanish does. So, for example, let's see. Okay, so in in Spain Spanish, to rent, like rent an apartment, you would say alquilar. But in Latin American Spanish, they say rentar, like rentar. Like anytime you have an AR, IR, ER at the end of the word, it's a verb, usually. So like over there, they say it more like, I don't know, it's just interesting. Also, you know how like with British English, they say flat instead of apartment, and over here we say apartment. Well, it's the same thing between Spain Spanish and Latin American Spanish. Over there they say piso, which is flat, but over here in Latin America they say apartamento, which I think, I'm no linguist, but I'm pretty sure they got that from English. And there's a bunch of other things just like that. And maybe my Spanish friend Aritz can have some input on this if you're watching this video. Okay, so the basic conclusion of linguistic study into this subject is that as large groups of ancient Israelites left their homeland, first following the Assyrian captivity of northern Israel around 700 BC, and the Babylonian captivity of Judah in the south around 600 BC, and second, following the Roman conquest of Palestine around 70 AD, their language influenced the languages of some of the countries to which they migrated. This linguistic evidence can help us determine where some of these Israelites went and approximately when. Although ancient Israelites were eventually scattered throughout the entire world, see Amos 9:9, which let's go ahead and do that. For lo, I will command, and I will sift the house of Israel among all nations, even as corn is sifted in a sieve, yet shall not the least grain fall upon the earth. Okay, at least one general geographical area contains significant linguistic evidence to suggest that Israelite migrations did in fact occur there. That area is Europe. Now, you guys, I know that you that believe that there's a hidden group of Israelites somewhere would say, well, yeah, because there's the quote from, I can't remember who, if it was Josephus, but there's like this famous kind of like telling, I don't know if it's from Bruce R. McConkie's Mormon Doctrine, but and I've had a hard time finding it. So if you know what I'm talking about, please put it in the comments below. And if YouTube deletes your comment, then just email me. I have my email on the About tab of my channel. I know that you're going to say that, well, yeah, they went north primarily, and it took time for them to travel up there, and they branches split off, and probably a lot of them went to Europe, and that's fine. But I really do feel like they just came here to Europe, and in great number, because if, like he just said, if they came here, it's usually the larger group that has influence on the other groups that they come in contact with, that cause the changes. If it was just branches that were branching off of that main group, I doubt that they would have been big enough to really influence the other dominant languages of that area. I could be wrong, but just what do you think about that? I don't know. Let me take a drink. My throat was getting a little bit dry. All right, linguistic evidence in Europe. From the Old Testament and other historical sources, such as the annals of the Assyrian kings, we learn that the northern kingdom, after years of war and deportation, fell to Assyrian invaders in 721 BC. Jeremiah emphasized the north countries as being these Israelites' eventual destination. See Jeremiah 3:12. Hope you guys don't mind. I'm going to go ahead and read this. I think that when you do these studies, even though we want short little videos that, that we can process, that's not how learning works. Learning takes a long time, so I'm just going to go through these. I'm sorry if that annoys anybody. Jeremiah chapter 3:12 through 18. Go and proclaim these words. My gosh, excuse me. Go and proclaim these words toward the north, and say, "Return, thou backsliding Israel." This is a scripture that we just went over yesterday in my British Israelism video. Go and proclaim, and like I said, the word "go" right here implies, I think, missionary work. So right now, as far as I'm aware, it's not possible to go to the northern tribes that are hidden in the hollow earth or under the ice caps. Of course, that could change in the future, but it's my understanding that that point of view says that they are going to come to us. They're going to reveal themselves. So, like, where does this "go" fit in your school of thought? Let me know. Go and proclaim these words toward the north, and say, "Return, thou backsliding Israel, saith the Lord. And I will not cause mine anger to fall upon you, for I am merciful, saith the Lord, and I will not keep anger forever. Only acknowledge thine iniquity, that thou hast transgressed against the Lord thy God, and hast scattered thy ways to the strangers under every green tree, and ye have not obeyed my voice, saith the Lord. Turn, O backsliding children, saith the Lord, for I am married unto you." There's that marriage symbolism that especially has to do with the second coming, when Christ, the bridegroom, comes to his bride, the church. "And I will take you, one of a city and two of a family, and I will bring you to Zion. And I will give you pastors according to mine heart, which shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. And it shall come to pass, when ye be multiplied and increased in the land, in those days, saith the Lord, they shall say no more, the ark of the covenant of the Lord, neither shall it come to mind, neither shall they remember it, neither shall they visit it, neither shall that be done any more." Really? I guess I wasn't aware of the scripture. The ark of the covenant of the Lord, neither shall it come to mind. Yeah, okay. Just off the surface, I'm thinking, yeah, we don't really talk about the ark anymore. It was like the holiest object back then. But we're definitely in a new time. And anyway, I'm not going to go off on that. 17. "And at the time that they call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem, neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel, and they shall come together out of the land of the north, to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers." Okay. Jeremiah 23:7 and 8. This is another big one that we've discussed on this channel. You can find this one in my video where President Nelson, in I think it was 1997, he did parallels between the Exodus and the modern day Pioneer Trek, and between the two Josephs, and then Moses and Brigham Young. And he seems to be saying that this has been fulfilled in that article, in my opinion. "Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that they shall no more say, The Lord liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt." Again, I just want to highlight, we're no longer going to be talking about it. There's no mention in the scripture that this next part is going to be more grand, more marvelous, more spectacular, more miraculous, whatever. Okay? "But the Lord liveth, which brought up in which led the seed of the house of Israel from the north country, and from all countries whither I have driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. And that, I would say that that has already happened. We commemorate Pioneer Day. We literally, just like the Jews do the Feast of Tabernacles, where they kind of reenact wandering in the wilderness and being in tents and booths. We literally, I'm pretty sure every single stake throughout the entire world commemorates the Pioneer Trek, and they have like their hand carts and they make activities out of it. That's what we're doing nowadays. We're not commemorating the Exodus the same way that the Jews still do. We're now talking about this group of the North that came from Britain and the eastern parts of the United States and other places that literally migrated and joined the Saints and stayed as one body in the United States as they eventually made it all the way to Utah. And now we're going across the entirety of the world, everywhere, using technology and incredible means of travel to find them. So it is, if you want to think of it that way, it is more incredible than what happened with Israel coming out of Egypt. And I know a lot of you have in mind, you know, the Charlton Heston 10 Commandments movie with the gigantic walls of water being separated and all that stuff. And I think that you're looking at things probably pretty cinematically, frankly. I'm not trying to cause contention, but just think about this. Think about what I'm saying and what makes more sense. Anyway, okay, let's move on. It implied a western route. See Jeremiah 17:18. I will scatter them as with an east wind before the enemy, and I will shew my back. I will shew them the back and not the face in the day of their calamity. Okay, so because of an east wind, they're being driven west. Hosea 12:1. Ephraim feedeth on wind, and followeth after the east wind. He daily increaseth lies and desolation, and they do not make a covenant with the Assyrians, and oil is carried into Egypt. Okay, so north and west. So if you put those scriptures together, the same way that, what's his name again, Terry M. Blodgett is doing, let's take a look at the map again. Let's just look up United Kingdom, because I believe that there is a very high concentration specifically in the United Kingdom. So again, looking at geography here, here's Israel right here, this little country, and it's roughly the same boundaries as it was anciently. Not perfectly, but pretty close, pretty good. So the Northern Kingdom was right here, right? And then they were taken into Syria, which is in the location of modern day Syria. You know, there is the difference between Assyria and Syria, but of course this one, I believe, derives its name from Assyria. So they were taken captive here. We have a record that there was a group that remained intact that traveled north, and so directly north of there is Turkey, Georgia, Ukraine, Russia, Finland, Sweden, and then west, well, that takes you right up into Europe, the mainland of Europe. And then if you go all the way northwest, it takes you to the United Kingdom, and I guess maybe Iceland, but I don't have a case for Iceland. But anyway, it makes a lot of sense that they came over here. All right. Thus, a natural place to look for what befell the remnants is to study the countries north and west of the Middle East. It is of interest, therefore, to learn that in Europe, the centuries following 700 BC were marked by tremendous outside influence, and language was profoundly affected. Okay, to learn that in Europe, the centuries following 700 BC. Okay. During the period between 700 and 400 BC. So he's talking about around the time of the Assyrian conquest and after. During the period between 700 and 400 BC, numerous languages in Europe underwent major pronunciation changes and absorbed new vocabulary. That's interesting already, right there. What does footnote 2 say? Of course, I have to zoom in. That just has references if you want to go check that out. This was particularly true of the Celtic languages, which were originally spoken throughout Europe, 700 to 300 BC. But gradually, and remember, Celtic, the Celts, they weren't just, a lot of times we associate that with Ireland, but the Celts were actually all throughout Europe, I believe, or not just in Ireland. So don't make that mistake if that's where you think the Celts are, or where they're from, or whatever. So were originally spoken throughout Europe, 700 to 300 BC, but gradually became more concentrated in Western Europe and Britain, and of the Germanic languages. Let's take a look at the Germanic language tree, because English is a part of that, just in case you're not familiar. When we go to images here, we'll find, let's just look at this one. Proto-Germanic, let's see, English is over here, Western Germanic. So it goes Proto-Germanic, West Germanic, Anglo-Frisian, and then English and Frisian. And then over here you have Netherlandic German, which goes down to Netherlandic and German. And then you have Icelandic over here, Faroese, Norwegian, Danish, Swedish, Gothic over here, East Germanic Gothic. So English is a Germanic language, in case you didn't know, which were spoken in Central and Northern Europe and Scandinavia, and eventually in England. The gradual evolving of the sounds that make up words in the language, particularly when two languages merge, is known by linguists as sound shift. The well-known pronunciation changes of the period of time between 700 and 400 BC have been called the Germanic sound shift, because they were most pronounced and systematic in the German languages, which include English, Dutch, German, Danish, Swedish, Norwegian, and Icelandic. There's a footnote there, footnote 3, and that says, for a detailed description of the Germanic sound shift, see Waterman. Okay, so it's just another, probably most of these are going to be just footnotes like that. Also during the same time period, the total vocabulary in the Germanic languages increased by as much as 1/3. That is pretty sizable. Okay, linguists have long pondered what caused this sound shift and the increase in vocabulary. Footnote 5. Okay. One theory is that the technologically advanced peoples who introduced iron to Europe, 7th century BC in Austria, 6th century BC in Sweden, also influenced the language changes. Okay, so maybe that's one reason why they were influential. It may not have just been numbers, but just the technology that they bring. Linguistic research supports this idea, as well as the idea that these advanced peoples came from the Middle East, where iron was in use. The research shows that changes in language resulted from an influx of Hebrew-speaking people into Europe, particularly into the Germanic and Celtic-speaking areas. Let's look at a map of where the Celts were. It probably changed throughout time, but let's see, Celtic map. What's that gonna show us? Map of Celtic peoples post-classical period. So you just have pretty much all throughout Europe. Here's one from Wikipedia. It kind of shows that same area. They were down in the Iberian Peninsula, which I knew about that. And then obviously up here in the British Isles. So these are the Celts right here, just roughly speaking. Just roughly speaking, if you want to do a specific study, you'll have to do it on your own. Okay, the Germanic sound shift. Most of the languages of Europe belong to the Indo-European family of languages. That is, they are part of the linguistically linked group of languages spoken in Europe and spreading as far east as Iran and India. Let's look that up. Indo-European European language tree. So the Germanic tree is going to be a branch off that. So Proto-Indo-European, you can see it right here. You got, let me put this in a separate tab so we can see it a little bit better. So here we got these main branches. So all these languages here belong to this family of languages. Balto-Slavic, Germanic, Celtic, Italic, also known as like the Romance languages, Spanish, Catalan, French, Italian, Hellenic, which is Greek, Anatolian, that's in the area of Turkey, Indo-Iranian, including Iranian, which a lot of times, you call that Persian, Indic, and Sanskrit, so this is getting into Hindi and the languages, I guess, in India, and then Tocharian. Okay, so we, speaking English, would be part of this branch right here, the Germanic, like we talked about before, English. Spanish would be down here under the Italic or the Romance languages over here, but all these languages, Russian, and here's Russian right here under the Balto-Slavic, all these languages are in the same family, so going all the way as far as, if you look at it geographically, so all of Europe right here, all of Europe, and then over here Anatolia, Turkey area, into Iran, which would be the Persian, and then over here India. So it's a pretty wide swath of land. Okay, so let's move on. For many years, which is interesting because we've noted that there was a group of Jews and probably some of the 10 lost tribes that were here in India. And in future videos, we're going to go over other groups that claim Israelite descendancy throughout India, as well as we've talked about the Pashtuns here in Afghanistan, but they very well could have had influence on Persian or their ancestors. And so just like he said in this article, it's very complex, but you can start to kind of put together a picture when you put all these pieces together. Okay, so I think that's significant. For many years, the peculiarities in the Germanic languages kept linguists from recognizing that the Germanic languages belong to the Indo-European group. Interesting. For many years, the peculiarities in the Germanic languages kept linguists from recognizing that Germanic languages belonged to the European group. Okay, you get that? So because of the oddities, they weren't even sure that Germanic belonged here. And those oddities, of course, would have come from what he's saying, the Hebrew influence. However, early in the 19th century, two linguists, Rasmus Rask, that's a great name, Rasmus Rask from Denmark, 1818, and Jacob Grimm from Germany, 1819 to 22, showed that the Germanic languages were indeed part of the Indo-European family, but that their differences in pronunciation were caused by a systemic shift in the sound of two groups of consonants, P, T, K, and B, D, G. Let's see. Footnote 6. This article follows the professional linguistic convention of placing groups of related sounds in brackets. Okay. Well, I'm glad that I know that now. At the time of the sound shift, the pronunciation of these 6 consonants was changed to PH, TH, KH, and BH, BD, or DH, and GH, respectively. These new sounds were eventually represented in writing by the letters F, TH, H, X, or CH. Okay, this is getting a little detailed here, sir. Now the relationship between the Indo-European word pater and the English word father becomes more recognizable. Okay. Okay, yeah, Potter, father. Linguists generally agree that these changes began taking place somewhere after 700 BC. So it seems like there's a direct correlation from the Northern Kingdom being scattered and migrating and these linguistic changes. And that influence causing the sound shift continued to affect the Germanic dialects for several centuries, at least until 400 BC, and possibly as late as the Christian era. Um, Unfortunately, scholars have not been able to agree upon what caused these changes or where the original homeland of the peoples may have been. Scholars have traced them to the Black Sea area and to the Caucasus Mountains, but research did not trace them beyond there because the scholars did not know whether that had been the people's first homeland or they had come from the east or south of that point. My research took me to the Middle East, and it is there that I found a likely cause of the sound shift, the Hebrew language. Cool, good job. The first thing I noticed was that Hebrew shifted the same 6 consonants that were shifted in Germanic, and that was what we just read, the PTK and the BDG. In ancient Hebrew, these consonants carried a dual pronunciation. Often they did not shift, but when they began a syllable, okay, we're going to move past the technical stuff. Thus, the Hebrew word for Spain, separad, was pronounced Sepharada. Sorry, Sepharad. And the word for sign, spelled OT, was pronounced OTH, or Oth. Okay. In 700 BC, this sound shift was still functional in Hebrew and would have been part of any impact that migrating Israelites would have had on their languages. The fact that the same consonants were involved in similar sound shifts in both Hebrew and Germanic dialects at about the same time is significant. Yet even more significant is that the sounds PH, TH, KH, and BH, DH, GH, so prevalent in Hebrew, did not exist in Germanic before the sound shift occurred. Wow, you guys, this is crazy. This is crazy. The comparison of Hebrew and Germanic. The case for Hebrew influence on Germanic is further strengthened by a close comparison to the two languages, and particularly of the changes that developed in Germanic following the Assyrian captivity of Israel. The changes fall generally into 3 categories: pronunciation, grammar, and vocabulary. I might just skip through that part, maybe. New Germanic words from Hebrew word roots, the High German sound shift, the Aramaic influence, 2 Hebraic sound shifts, the gathering of Israel. So if you want to go into this yourself, you can. I'm going to skip all the way down here because I don't want this video to go too long. Although I find the entire thing fascinating. I don't want to get too many people too bored. The gathering of Israel, the role that Abraham's descendants would play in the course of world history was foreshadowed early in the biblical record. To Abraham, the Lord said, "I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee." Genesis 17:6. The Lord renewed his promise with Isaac, Genesis 26:4, and again with Jacob, saying that his descendants would spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south, and in thee and in thy seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed. This spreading would come as Moses foretold. Israel would someday be scattered among the nations and be left few in number among the heathen, whither the Lord hath led them. This would be a thorough dispersion. As the Lord said in Amos 9:9, he would sift the house of Israel among all nations. But he also promised that he would not forget Israel. Eventually, the children of Israel would be gathered out of the lands from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south. Although Israel would be scattered throughout the world, the countries north of Israel were particularly singled out as lands from which Israel would be gathered. Okay, so So again, talking between the two schools of thought, that there's a secret group of Israelites, or simply that they're in the north in Europe, you know, let's take this into account, what this guy is saying. Although Israel would be scattered throughout the world, so yes, that's the one part, because I keep getting comments of people saying, well, there's two different parts. There's Israel that's scattered throughout the world, but then there's also the North group, and it's two separate events. It's two separate keys that were given to Joseph Smith when it comes to the gathering of Israel. Although Israel would be scattered throughout the world, the countries north of Israel were particularly singled out as lands from which Israel would be gathered. Jeremiah wrote that, "The days come, saith the Lord, that it shall no longer be said, the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt." Excuse me. "But the Lord liveth, that brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north, and from all the lands whither he hath driven them." Oh my gosh, let me take another drink of water. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. It's no wonder that Jesus sent his apostles out into all the world to preach the gospel, or that he said that they should go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Let's read those scriptures really quick. Mark 16:15. He said unto them, "Go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature." Matthew 10:6. "But go ye rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Israel's peoples have been scattered a long time now. As far as we know, only a portion of Judah retained its identity over the centuries. With the restoration of the gospel through the prophet Joseph Smith, many members who have received their patriarchal blessings have been identified with the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, and a sprinkling of other tribes. It is also significant that among the first who... Now, I want to stop there. So when was this article written again? Was it 1994? Let's see. Yeah, 1994. Now, we don't know what's happened since 1994, and I don't think that he has all the numbers. Like I said, I like to highlight that that story from Sister Wendy Nelson when she went to Russia and she was able to find all 11 tribes, or all the tribes except for Levi. And then when she went down to Armenia, she found someone that was from Levi, according to their patriarchal blessings. So as things have progressed since that time, we don't know what the numbers are right now. And as far as I know, only the general authorities have access to those numbers. So that's just a side note. It's also significant that among the first to accept the gospel in this dispensation were people who lived, or who had ancestors who lived, in the very countries that received Israelite migrations. Absolutely. I totally agree. The early church, and this is commemorated a lot and talked about a lot in lessons, in Sunday school and priesthood and Relief Society, how there were so many faithful saints that came from England and from the United Kingdom as a whole. And then they migrated over here and joined the saints wherever they were, whether it was in Ohio or wherever, and they followed them all the way to Utah. And that includes my own family. I have in my own family tree, I have people that came directly from England specifically for that reason, and either they joined the saints wherever they were over here, or they came directly to Utah, because some of them came later on, but they came just directly from England. Okay, seeing their footsteps. Changes in language provide only one kind of linguistic evidence we can use to identify the dispersion of Israel. Other linguistic evidence can be found in place names and in the names of various ancient peoples who lived north of the Middle East, following the captivity of Israel. Many of these people migrated farther north and west into Russia, Scandinavia, Europe, and Britain. The apocryphal book of 4 Ezra, a continuation of the book of Ezra from the Old Testament, describes how Shalmaneser, sorry, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, king of Assyria, took northern Israel captive. It also indicates that Isaiah prophesied that at least some of the Israelites escaped their captors and fled north. Let's see what this scripture says. Isaiah 10:27. And it shall come to pass in that day that the burden shall be taken away from off thy shoulder, and his yoke from off thy neck, and the yoke shall be destroyed because of the anointing. Wow, that's cool. That's cool. That's really cool. I like that. According to the account in 4 Ezra, referred to in some editions as Second Esdras, and I think this is actually the same book that Ezra's Eagle comes out of. Don't quote me on that, but it does come from an apocryphal book by the name of Esdras, and I don't know if it's like whatever, I don't know, but it may be this very same book that talks about Ezra's Eagle. That's an entirely separate subject. You'll have to look that up on your own. The fleeing captives entered into the Euphrates, but okay, yeah. So I think this is that passage that people are always quoting about what happened to the main body of the 10 lost tribes and where they went. The fleeing captives entered into Euphrates by the narrow passage of the river and traveled a year and a half through a region called Ararat. The narrow passage could refer to the Darial Pass, also called the Caucasian Pass, which brings near the headwaters of the Euphrates River and leads north through the Caucasus Mountains. So we're talking about over here. Isn't this where the Caucasus Mountains are? I mean, here's the, I don't know my rivers. I know that the Euphrates is gonna, whatever. Is there like a, let's see. What's this? Sorry, everyone, sorry. Whatever. Anyway, the Euphrates is one of these rivers over here that's in Iraq. So I think he's talking about they were over here somewhere by the Euphrates and then went up this way, because it's my understanding that the Caucasus Mountains are like over here in eastern Russia, essentially. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. At the turn of the century, Russian archaeologist Daniel Chvolson noted that a stone mountain ridge running alongside this narrow passage bears the inscription Reit Israela, wow, which he interpreted to mean the gates of Israel. That is really cool. Caucasus, let's see, Darial Pass. Let me see if that probably won't pull up in Google Maps, but let's give it a try. Well, it looks like that's putting that here in Georgia, right on the border with Georgia and Russia. I don't know if that's what it's. I don't know if that's the right location. This is Darial Gorge, but I would assume probably. So I guess right about there is where we're talking about. So that's where they saw Reit Israela, the gates of Israel. And that definitely kind of looks like a, because like you're surrounded on one side by the Black Sea, on the other side by the Caspian Sea. I don't know. I find that interesting. These narrow passages lead through a region called Ararat in Hebrew and Urartu in Assyrian. Chvolson writes that Arsareth, mentioned in 4 Ezra, was another name for Ararat, a region extending to the north shores of the Black Sea. Okay, so to the north shores of the Black Sea, so up here. Okay. A river at the northwest corner of the Black Sea was anciently named Sereth, now Siret, possibly preserving part of the name Arsareth, since Ar in Hebrew meant city. It is probable that Arsareth was a city. the city of Sareth, located near the Sareth River, northwest of the Black Sea. Let's see if we can find that. Sareth. Sareth. Let's look for Sareth River. Sareth River. Is that Sareth? Where's Sareth? Okay, well, whatever. This is the whatever. Probably like right here in this area. It says okay. It doesn't matter. A number of other geographical locations in this area of the Black Sea have names that suggest Hebraic origins. For example, the names of the 4 major rivers that empty into the Black Sea seem to have linguistic ties to the tribal names of Dan. They are Don and its tributary, the Don Jets, the Dan Jester, now Dniester, the Danube or Donau, and the Dan Jepper, now Dnieper. I am so good at pronouncing these. North of the Caspian Sea is a city called Samaria. So the Caspian Sea being on this other side over here. So first we're talking about over here, this kind of northwest region of the Black Sea. Well, look, there's Donetsk. So I don't know if maybe that's rooted in Dan. Rostov on Don. Okay, this is not. I'm not a professional. I'm not a scholar. I'm just kind of noting what I see. So over here, this part about north of the Black Sea, and then over here the Caspian Sea. Here's the Caspian Sea. Okay. There's also a city of Ishmael on the Danube, and a little farther upstream is a city called Isaac. Javolson and others of the Russian Archaeological Society found more than 700 Hebraic inscriptions in the area north of the Black Sea. So, up here, according to Javolson, one of the inscriptions refers to the Black Sea as the Sea of Israel. Wow. On the Crimean Peninsula was a place referred to as the Valley of Jehoshaphat, a Hebrew name, and another place called Israel's Fortress. So I think there's probably no doubt that they were in this area. According to the Russian archaeologists, in Russian you pronounce W's and V's, you swap the sound. So Vsevolod Mueller, there was an Israelitish synagogue at Kerch, a city on the Crimea, long before the Christian era. And we all know Crimea was kind of like a big thing in the news. I don't even know if that war is still going on, but that's this right here, this area that Russia claims. Well, in fact, I haven't really followed up on this story, but I think they still have it. They annexed this for themselves, which was really messed up. But again, you guys, I've made mention in my other videos how wars that have been taking place, wars usually cause people to move. And we know that since America has been a nation, a lot of people have come to America after a war has taken place in their area. So it just makes you wonder how the Lord is working through different wars, even something as recent as what happened in Crimea. And who knows how many of these people still have Israelite DNA, or how much, or whatever. But it's just interesting to note. It's interesting to note. It's difficult to date these inscriptions, but some of them contain information relating to the fall and captivity of Israel. Gosh. Others appear, others appear to have been written about the time of Christ and even later, indicating that, indicating that the area north of the Black Sea contained an Israelite population for many centuries. One of these inscriptions mentioned 3 of the tribes of Israel, as well as Tiglath-Pileser, the first Assyrian king to transport large segments of the population of Israel to Assyria. Another inscription mentions King Hoshea, who reigned in Israel during the years of Israel's fall. The Russian archaeologists also found mounds or heaps of earth dotting the landscape. These mounds stretched across the entire region of the Black Sea, where the Hebraic inscriptions were found. Turned out to be elaborate burial chambers, often containing a leader of the people with some of his possessions. Although mound building was not a typical type of burial in the Middle East, high heaps or great heaps are described as a means of burial in several Old Testament passages. Let's take a quick look at that. Joshua 7:6. And they raised over him a great heap of stones unto this day. Okay. Joshua 8:29. And the king of Ai he hanged on a tree until eventide. And as soon as the sun was down, Joshua commanded that they should take his carcass down from the tree and cast it at the entering of the gate of the city, and raise thereon a great heap of stones that remaineth unto this day. Okay, so you get the idea. Furthermore, the people of Ephraim were commanded in the Old Testament specifically to build up high heaps as waymarks as they traveled. Jeremiah 31:21. Set thee up waymarks, make thee high heaps, set thine heart toward the highway, even the way which thou wentest. Turn again, O virgin of Israel, turn again to these thy cities. These Black Sea mounds contain not only inscriptions but also drawings, jewelry, and other artifacts indicative of Hebrew origin. The mounds stretch from the Black Sea northward through Russia to the top of the Scandinavian peninsula, then southward to southern Sweden, where thousands of mounds are found. So let's go to the map again. So northward into Russia right here. Most of the population of Russia is here in the west, the western part of the country. So up this way into Russia, up into the Scandinavian peninsula, which would be right here, Finland, Sweden, Norway, and then it said down into south, the southern part of Sweden. Similar burial mounds are also found in Britain and Western Europe, okay, indicating that migration in westerly and northwesterly directions. Herodotus identified the first of the mound builders in the Black Sea area as Chimeroi. The Romans referred to them as Cimmeri, from which we have the name Cimmerians. They called themselves Cumri, which refers to the dynasty of King Omri. Omri was king of northern Israel about 900 BC. He founded Samaria and established the capital of Israel there. His mode of government made him popular throughout the Middle East, and northern Israel came to be known by his name politically from that time on. Interesting, from 900 BC, so just a couple of hundred years before the Assyrian conquest. Okay, and now there's a couple interesting things here that I noticed as I did a quick little scan of this article, but I didn't read the whole thing. So check this out. There are other peoples throughout Europe and Asia whose origins trace from this area and whose names seem to have a Hebrew root. Among these are the Gelati. The root word probably comes from the biblical Gilead, the region east of the Jordan River, pronounced Galad, in the region and in Assyria, and the Celts, a German pronunciation of Gelati. Interesting. And the Celts, a Germanic pronunciation of Gelati. The Gali or Gali root word probably from the biblical Galilee. That is fascinating. My gosh. Also called Gauls, Gales, Gauls, the Sakites or Scythians. We've talked about the Scythians before. The word comes from the Assyrian captives Isaksa. Gosh, these names. Isaac, Ska, and Saka, comparable to the Hebrew Isaac. Yeah, gosh. The Goths, or the Gatai, the root probably from the biblical Gad, pronounced Gath. The Jutes of Jutland, from the tribe of Judah, and the Parsi, the Hebrew, from Hebrew Paras, which means the dispersed ones, who settled in Paris, and whose name is in Germanic territory sound shifted to Frisians. And that's the end. That's the end of this article. I hope you stuck with it. I'm sure some people probably got bored, but I find this fascinating. I think that this just gives so much evidence to the fact that the northern group of Israelites that traveled north, they came here. They came here. They came here to Israel. And it seems like their fingerprints are all over the place. All over the place. All the way to Portugal. So hopefully you enjoyed this. I know I sure did. Thank you again, Bonnie and Dino, for pointing this out. I hope you guys go back and read this, and then just tuck this away in your memory bank, in your knowledge, and we'll just leave it right there. So if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video. If you liked it, hit the notification bell. Leave your comments, especially if you have sources for your information. I would like it if you could put that in here. If YouTube deletes it, then just email me under the About tab of my YouTube channel, and I'll talk to you guys later.